So this tweet floated around on my timeline quite a bit yesterday, and it made me want to jump on the general idea of power creep, right? And power creep is a thing, happens every single year where bosses will continue to hit harder to scale along with our characters. But I feel like this year stands out compared to a lot of the previous years for multiple different reasons. I feel like the amount of not only just attack that these bosses are doing, but HP that these bosses have are at a much greater rate in terms of their increases than it has been in previous years. And we're going to directly compare it to last year as well. I think that it'll be just a good little look because I feel like last year's power creep was also more than people anticipated to actually happen. And again, I find this topic interesting just because of how I see the player base react to it, along with my own specific take when it comes to things like this. Now, again, the original question here was, should double-digit tanking 10 million damage attack be a new expectations for Dokkan festivals and LRs 2025? I think very obviously a lot of people did vote yes. Some people did vote no. It is actually a 70-30% split, more or less. And I could somewhat see the no side, except it feels like maybe people don't know how much damage these new bosses are actually doing. We're hitting the point where bosses are doing like 25 mil damage at their peaks. Again, we can go ahead and see festival battles. Disco Gita is actually hitting a 30 mil damage super attack, and then this guy's hitting a 25 million damage super attack, basically. And you could say, well, this is at the end of an event where you're stacking for a billion turns, and very, very fair that, we're bringing this fight up. But then let's go ahead and take a look at this Goku Black fight. And this is where my own question in terms of power creep comes into play that we'll look at. But this Goku Black, when he's fully built up, he's doing a lot of damage. I mean, the amount of damage he could do goes to the point of him hitting 25 mil attack stats on a super attack potentially. His normals are doing extremely high damage as well, I believe. I mean, they're shooting up to nearly 7-8+ mil on his normals alone, which is like really, really crazy. Zamasu himself doesn't do that type of damage, but you have Zamasu here with his locking, he's healing, right? This is a very interestingly designed boss, but the stats that these bosses have are on par with some of these later festival battles kind of enemies, but these characters are like turn 4, turn 5. This is like turn like 50 or something like that, right? So it's kind of crazy to see this kind of increase, I would say. Now Infinite Zamasu, another boss, I mean, this guy hits when he's fully built up 600% attack from each turn pass, starting with the second turn up to 3000%. This guy's also hitting like 25+ mil attack stats. I saw someone say he's hitting for like 32 mil. I'm not sure how concrete that is. I actually never did the math for myself personally, but again, I know that he's hitting 25+ mil as well. And like, I think it's kind of like interesting to see that. And along, the HP for these bosses are obviously not as high. But I mean, this guy's at 1.4 billion HP. Now, I would say that Zamasu fight, I'm not really counting as like an actual fight because there's the Zeno button, right? But then both of these fights can also be attack debuff, right? We got to keep that in mind too. I think that is really, really important to consider, that these guys can also be attack debuffed, which could really neuter what these guys are doing. While in this fight, you could stack up. So there are ways around it. And I think that might be something that people aren't understanding. But I think, for a brand new character you summon for, it's very fair to expect that they would double-digit tank a 10 million damage attack, considering that normals are hitting for that level at this point, right? At least like 8-9 mil, like I would say, should be an expectation for brand new characters. It depends, right? Some characters are characters that are mainly dodge characters, right? Like the blue Goku and Vegeta. So I would understand maybe, hey, them living a 10 mil normal necessarily, as long as they don't like instantly get killed by it. Even if they take it for like 100k, they have 80% chance to dodge. Ideally, they do tank normals, and they usually are able to tank normals in like 9 out of 10 scenarios. So not really a big deal for me personally. I think these guys are actually like they're an example of unit that I think, you know, we are seeing that, right? Rose Goku Black is another character where we are of course seeing that. I think there's a honestly should be a very obvious yes, so I'm not really too focused on this, but what I wanted to see is how people feel about the strength and power creep of how strong these bosses are getting this year. And I think this is getting like this is more of a divided poll here, where we're seeing 46% of people are still saying it's enjoyable and challenging, 35% of people are neutral, and then 18% of people are saying it's not enjoyable, right? And then again, we can take a look here. Let's see here the Gogeta fight. In fact, we could also even go a year back to the Fusion Zamasu fight, where I think Fusion Zamasu was seen pretty clearly as the hardest fight at the time. There is Omega Shenron, but I think Fusion Zamasu is really what took the cake for a lot of people back in 2022. And again, we go ahead and see here, or with 2023, my bad, I'm kind of stupid. 2022 was the cooler worldwide. Now, again, we see Zamasu was doing 500k AoE damage normals. He was doing 1.25 mil. And then once this Fusion Zamasu built up, he got his super attack off. He's hitting for over 2 mil, right? We're seeing like 2 mil damage from these bosses, which is really kind of insane, right? Then we skip over to the 9th anniversary, and we see this Gogeta at the end. He's doing a 3.6 million damage super attack. Can be attack lowered, keep that in mind. And actually it's 3.6 million because of his 100% attack raise. And then these AoEs could potentially hit for, what is that, 1.2 mil AoEs, which is a huge increase considering he could also do 2 AoEs in the same turn, right? Compared to like Fusion Zamasu, he has 1 AoE a turn. This guy could technically do 2 a turn. He also has 0 cooldown. Zamasu had the same thing, but less percentage on a super attack, right? It was like a huge thing. Now, this is obviously a fight you could build up to again, but the amount of damage that these bosses were doing, it really did jump up during this kind of celebration. Then we go over to the Goku Frieza fight, where this guy was doing 2 mil, but then they had started giving them these attack percentages in their passive skills. Before, we didn't have that with these bosses, but introduced during that same year with the Golden Week celebration, but Super Saiyan 3 Goku and Majin Buu, we had the red zone for the Majin Buu saga, and they started giving them more effects, including the attack buffs, right? So then we started seeing things like attack 10% with each turn up, 100% attack when HP is 50% or less. So then we saw things where, like this guy, you know, like later on, like with an extra turn or 2 pass, he was hitting over 3 mil with dodge disable. Then we went ahead to see this character. If he was under 50% HP, then he would like if he was under 50% HP, he'd be hitting for 5 million. 5.4-ish mil to be exact, or 5.6 actually, my bad. Or is okay. 5.7 with a guaranteed super basically turn 1 and before you attack, which is a very devastating at the time. And we even see the HP for these bosses, right? This Zamasu was at 70 mil HP, this Gogeta 70 mil HP, but then we had all these bosses before then Goku Frieza 100 mil HP, this guy 100 mil HP. Like, you guys could see the general decline, right? Or not decline, what's the word? The general increase basically for these bosses here. Then we go ahead and go to this year, where there was a huge jump, I would say, from Goku Frieza to this year's Universe Rival Saga fights, right? And again, we're comparing like the very last fights that came out during those celebrations. We see Jiren here. I mean, Toppo himself has more HP than this Goku and Frieza do. And I would say by the time that this Goku Frieza was like, you know, months old, we started getting a lot of characters who could almost one-shot him. I mean, even on release, you have like AGL DBS Broly who could like one-turn this guy. Like, there was things around this. Then we started getting these bosses. 150 mil HP from Toppo alone. Way more already than Goku Frieza and any of the previous bosses. Then Jiren himself. 350 mil HP. It's funny, Jiren has almost the same amount of HP himself as basically, he has more HP than this entire fight combined. More HP than this entire fight combined. And that's where a lot of people were like, wow, the HP increases, you could really feel it. if you're not using Vegito. But then on top of that, we have Topo hitting for past 5 mil. Like, I mean, Topo himself with his full attack buff, if I'm not mistaken, he was hitting for like 5 to 6 mil damage. Then we see Jiren once he got the full attack buff. Actually, yeah, I mean, Topo was hitting super hard when he got his full attack buff. Actually, if it is how it works, then Topo would be hitting for like 8 mil, basically. And then we got the attack rate, crazy. Jiren right here, this guy is already hitting for 5.7 mil with guaranteed to hit attacks, which means that dodge doesn't work. 2 million normals, which is crazy. This guy was hitting for basically 3 mil with guaranteed crits and dodge disable. Then this guy was also hitting for well beyond what, 4 to 5 mil damage as well. Like, it's pretty nasty what these characters were doing. And this guy also had AoEs. And it was a really huge step up from what we saw in the previous year. Even like comparing the jump from here to here, or here to here. The jump from here to here, I don't think was as large as a jump from here to here if we account everything that's been added here. Sorry, my dog's like behind me. Hello. He's just kind of moving around. Anyways, then we go over to festival battles. I mean, seeing that show is very funny. I just think it's a thing of these festival battles numbers. Even though it can be attack lowered, we're seeing these numbers here in these fights, which is kind of crazy. I would say at the same time, it's not as bad as people may think because of the fact that there is attack debuffs and things like that, right? I think that is a pretty big thing to consider, being able to lower their attack. I talked about that before. But I feel like a lot of people have been talking about how these bosses have had a pretty big like increase, which I actually see a lot of people favorable towards it, myself included, and here's kind of my take on it. We're actually seeing a challenge for our characters. We're seeing our characters actually be able to be used. Back in Goku Frieza, back in, you know, even the 9th anniversary, we've seen this a little, I would say, but like around this time, I feel like we truly couldn't see so many of these characters get their max build up, stack up a lot. But this year, I really did enjoy what they're doing with some of these bosses. Another thing we could consider, the Cell Max bosses, like they hit like 10 mil with AoE. The Broly boss, right, from Battle Hardened Formidable Foes, those two are bosses I didn't bring up. But these are actually challenging our toughest characters, right? And it's like, okay, well in this fight, you can actually dodge and attack disable, whilst this fight, you have to stack up for it. This fight, you also can attack disable, you technically have the Zeno button, but this guy has a more or less a scripted super attack where you usually 9 out of 10 times you will be able to actually disable that super attack specifically right there, right? My dog is like, he wants my attention. I'm gonna go give him some pets real quick. We'll be right back. All right, give him some pets. Sorry about that. But I think you guys kind of see my point that I'm making here, where it's like there is the things around it to kind of battle it. It's just a pretty interesting increase that we've seen compared to previous years, at least in my opinion. It's following a similar wavelength, right? But let's go ahead and see some of the replies here. I think let's see what people are saying. I think we'll see some pretty interesting results here. So you think the fights have been different and prioritize different team building, and it's not like fights are dropping, invalidating half the game anymore, so you've been satisfied with the last 2 years of Dokkan content drops. And again, yeah, I do really like how they're handling content this year. I feel like a lot of people weren't really a fan of like 10th anniversary contents. A lot of people felt like some of the content was too long. We're just not interested in it. And, you know, at the end of the day, it is kind of up to you and how you feel about it personally. I really did enjoy, like, we had both really long fights, and we had both, like, turn 4 fights given us during the anniversary. Then we had this super mega long fight to really test out these stackers that we never had before, right? Then in this fight here, again, I would say what I feel like was really missing was the option to use a lot of these like dodge based characters, because I think Battle Hardened Foes is really the one place we could use it. But I still think that we should get a longer fight that will enable us to use dodge characters. That would be nice. But I think this fight really feels like a fun fight because of how it's structured. I think a lot of people are annoyed by the locking, which is very fair, but I think it really makes dodge characters feel so important compared to, like, you know, the battle hardened foes fights even. And obviously in these fights it was not possible. In these fights, dodge characters would be dodge or die for the most part. And even in Infinite Zamasu, I feel like dodge could be very useful here. But another thing that I feel like has been very more useful now, especially compared to battle hardened foes, is attack lowering. I feel like in the battle hardened foes fights, attack lowering, you couldn't really apply too much unless you're using like the tech Goku Black clone. He's like instant. For the most part, I feel like attack lowering didn't really like help out too much, but in these fights it does quite a bit. So that's one thing I really do like, them giving kind of options and reasons for a lot of these other fights. Even like a defense lowering could be useful for this Zamasu right here, because he does raise his defense by quite a bit. Even Goku Black gets a lot of extra defense to where you might need to do some critical hits, but lowering the defense here could be useful. I think, you know, just to do a little bit of extra damage there. Now, as a Vector, kind of weird. Like, I feel like the bosses from the 10th anniversary were an appropriate level of power creep, but the designs of the bosses were very boring and anti-fun. The celebration bosses feel like they said, F it, crank them up, and it feels very worrying, or a little worrying. By far the most fun you had this year. It also feels like they've had super power creep damage, but only been willing to give that power creep damage to a few select characters. So, you know, you feel kind of different ways depending on the angle. But let's say the super power creep damage, but only being willing to give that power creep damage to a few select units. So you're talking about like the damage that our characters are doing. I mean, it depends, right, on the situation, right? I would say like Zamasu does crazy mega damage. Obviously, Vegito from the anniversary does. Vegeta side of this card could do crazy damage. Tao could do good damage, I think, overall, but it's not like anything super mega crazy. But you see Tao cranking up like 100+ mils. You see Tien can crank out like 100+ mil. Like, we're getting to the point where these characters, you know, they might be doing this level of damage, even without additionals, are cranking crazy levels of damage. Even this guy, I think, like, at times, he's not the best damage dealer, but he has the guaranteed crits, does like 3 guaranteed additional supers. Like, he could do overall a decent amount of damage too. I would not really think that these two are characters that stick out to me for damage, though hit at times, like on his active skill turn, can do some pretty relevant damage there. Obviously, the year 7 EZAs, and then Gogeta could do pretty good damage himself as well. Super Saiyan 4 Goku can build up to it as well. Like, it's really dependent, but yeah, I feel like the damage threshold for most characters released aren't like that level of damage, right? So I think that's a fair point to make. But then that's where like a lot of these other abilities come into play, and that's where Dokkan is becoming more and more, I think, not complicated is the right word, but more and more fleshed out with what the characters are doing, because there's so many different abilities that they can apply to these teams now, especially if they're allowing like attack lowering. Could be interesting. Maybe like there's a boss in the future where he has a territory skill, but then if you activate a domain, the boss could be stunned. That could be something that could potentially be interesting, where it's like, okay, on a very specific team build, you could utilize stun, and the boss hits for like a gajillion billion damage, but otherwise you may have to rely on dodge characters, or maybe you have to rely on something else, right? A lot of things. Or it's like, okay, when the territory skills down, the boss can no longer be attack lord, but can be stunned. So then you could stun during those turns, but then if the domain goes away, he can no longer be stunned, and all the attack debuffs you might have applied to him are gone. Like, there's ways that could kind of really make these bosses interesting, I think. Let's see here. Nothing particularly out of the ordinary. One thing you need to remember is that LR Beast Gohan is the strongest Dokkan character of all time. I would say I disagree. I think it's been a bigger increase than usual, but in terms of like what we're expecting for power creep and matching with these characters, it is somewhat in line. I just feel also the characters took a pretty big jump compared to last year too. Like, to the point where, again, like, we could take a look at some of these characters from last year, but you really do feel a lot of their aging effect, not even a year later. Like, you could really truly feel, I feel like Daime Goku and Glorio have been doing pretty well. I think it was a little bit of a dark spot for them But recently they came back with how these new events are. Again, we'll take a look here. Where's the Dokkan Fest? I'm like completely missing. My Gotenks obviously released just before that, so he ended up being nice. Buhan, you can kind of feel it a little. Though I have almost gone a no item run with Buhan in the new fight. I think it's maybe more so the characters around him with his power absorption restriction. We go back, obviously all the heroes units are dead, unrunnable. Like Slug is like, you could probably use him at this point, but he's not going to be the craziest character, if that makes sense. I think Slug, though, does he have attack debuffs? He does, doesn't he? Stun, yeah. Yeah, it's like demonic power is not in the best spot either. This guy would have 66% reduction, but 66% reduction with 1 mil plus range defense. Like let's say he's at like 1.5 mil defense with the 66% reduction. He's not like living like 5+ mil supers even, so that could definitely be an issue. I would say we could see him potentially even get up to like 2 mil defense. Honestly, it really depends on like what support's around, but yeah, like this guy is like, you know, I feel like just in terms of his stats, like he has a double 200% here with the high reduction, but he's just like not, his stats themselves are not as high. Because again, I've seen the Slug at Rainbow sitting like, once he's built up like 1 mil defense range before he supers, if you were to get a triple super, that would shoot him up to 2 mil, but it's just, it gets to a point where like he doesn't have dodge or guard or anything like that, or like maybe stacking or just extra stats in general, or like, you know, his defensive stat is pretty decent. But yeah, like Slug is a character where it's like, even if we get a new demonic power kind of lead, he could struggle in some situations, especially because, you know, in shorter fights he would also have to build up a little. Scouter Vegeta's kind of just like a festival merchant at this point. Honestly, he was never really crazy even on a release, to be fair. We even see like, you know, the worldwide celebration characters of last year, not really the best. Tech UI, there's also the global release schedule, right? But like Tech UI, Ito UI is still doing really good though. My goat. Gammas, like, you know, do you even see anyone use the Gammas ever? Pretty much not. Again, like you guys kind of are getting to the point there where I feel like you could really feel it, like these characters being aged out, though a lot of them had pretty good designs and were pretty strong. Like if we take, you could say it's better than it was in 2024, but 2023 was a year of like really mediocre designs. Physical Rosé obviously sucked. I say mediocre designs when we look at Physical Rosé. I think these two have aged pretty well though, so like at the same time, even though the boss's increase is huge, it's still a thing of a lot of these characters. Like it's dependent. It's just a lot of these characters have really good, like, you know, Goku has 90% reduction plus the guard, right? So I think it's a two-way street where you can make this argument. I just really do think that these bosses kind of stand out a little bit more. The damage card power creep between God Even and Broly is less than 2 times. The damage power creep between Jiren and Goku Black is more than 3 times. Battle hardened foes, you really kill them fast. That's not the same issue here. It's very enjoyable. Most people's criticisms don't make sense. If anything, the actual issue might be how crazy unit power creep from that anniversary onwards. Bosses are just trying to keep up, and that is also, like, again, very fair. I talked about this earlier. Now these bosses are challenging our characters. Like, we go back to the 9th anniversary. Again, we'll go to the JP version. Like, we go back to the 9th anniversary. These bosses were not really doing anything. Like, by the end of the Gogeta fight, we had this guy's target skill. Broly, like, can one-turn the Gogeta fight. This guy has his target skill as well, which is really good. The Gammas themselves were able to, like, basically face one, like, slot one tank any super themselves while being a 2-turn defensive support, which is pretty crazy. Sandy Vegeta was extremely good. Even Frieza, I've seen people ran Frieza in the Gogeta fight, right? Like, because of his mega attack debuffs. I've seen no item runs with this guy. Vegeta was doing no item runs very easily. Obviously, the Majin Buu Saga characters is doing well. Toppo could struggle a little bit once his reduction left, but he was still pretty good. Obviously, these two have aged incredibly well. Rose, So Max was doing really good. Like, in comparison to what the bosses were around, like, a lot of these characters were not struggling. I mean, we had Super Saiyan Goku, Vegeta, and Goku, Trunks, and Gohan. Like, slot 1 tanking Goku Frieza Super above 50% HP, but they're a slot 1 taking it as a type disadvantaged character. Like, now these bosses are not like that, where it's like you're always gonna live. Like you're like, it's not like a thing where, oh, you're good to go. Like, even in Goku Frieza wasn't like that either, for sure. But I feel like now these fights feel way more intense. And it really gives me the feeling of challenge back, right? Festival gave me that feeling. This fight gives me that feeling. Infinite Zamasu doesn't to the extent, because I mean, the Zeno button kind of exists, honestly. That's really the biggest thing for me personally. Is like, why rank this fight when the Zeno button exists, right? I just, like, it's a thing of, like, if every fight had a item you could one-shot the boss in, then obviously, like, those fights wouldn't matter either, and you could kind of just summon for whoever you want, right? But yeah, I mean, these fights didn't give me that feeling as much, I would say. It was nice to use a lot of these, like, longer stacking characters, but not as much as these two fights. I feel like have made me, like, feel really, really, like, dude, these are crazy. Like, now our units are actually getting challenged, right? You like the Powercreep, but you don't enjoy the fights. I would assume, like, the design of the fights. And again, locking can get very annoying. I do understand that. A lot of the fights earlier this year were so boring. Blue Goku and Festival, but you're really enjoying these new ones. Yeah, Blue Goku fight is another fight in this Universe Survival Saga. In fact, this is right here, the Vegeta story. This one was another, like, difficult, shorter fight, but again, disables evasion. A lot of people aren't. I think the big issue is that this short fight, this fight, and this fight all disable dodge. You're just like, we had battle hardened foes, but honestly, like, again, let's take a look at the HP battle hardened foes. I think Yuna talked about it earlier. Those fights go down a lot quicker than a lot of these other fights. Where is battle hardened formidable foes? Okay, let's take a look at the movie edition here. Like 100 mil, 120 mil, 100 mil, 200 mil, 100 mil, 150 mil. Like, these HP of these bosses we're not really keeping up with the damage that these characters could do, to where you could kind of, like, one turn them, or maybe like two turn them, I would say. But, like, a lot of times you could one turn these bosses now, right? With the damage that these characters are doing at this point. And you have, like, Tao wheeling around. Stun was a pretty big option there. So yeah, definitely want to call it all in fun, but when you start seeing numbers behind the scenes, it starts to feel a little too fast. I think that's fair. But then one thing is that these numbers are kind of just in your face, whereas a lot of the characters' numbers, you know, are post super attack, when receiving an attack, you know, dodge characters taking 0 damage. It's not something that you see like damage 0. It's like you just see the dodge happen. Like, I think that could be kind of what people are feeling too. Hold on, wait. I mute my Discord notifications. It's kind of a scuffed video, I can't lie. Begging for boss Powercreep for years. Our unit strength has been at way too high a level over the boss far too long. It's about time they give us fights as you could actually lose to. I would agree. You like it, just don't fumble units and allocate them well. You don't have an issue with the game design of the game, and the reason is that the reason these matches just happen. Mistakes are alright, just do the best of it. I think obviously it's because it's a gacha game. Characters will get stronger, fights will get stronger. That's how it is. So we're gonna always get higher and higher damage until we eventually, we're gonna have to get like some sort of number crunch, because we're reaching levels of damage that the game's code is literally not able to process. As a 32, I think it's a 32-bit game. Like, it's literally not able to process. Eventually, we're gonna get to the point where that damage is just not possible to kind of have in game. So that's the thing, right? We'll see what they do about that. You're just gonna say, but the 9th anniversary Dokkan did a much better job of handling Powercreep. Okay. I think would I disagree with this? I think I would. I feel like so many characters are viable now. Right now, I think if we consider the year 10 as a whole, we obviously did have 6 months with these 3 fights, which I feel like this is kind of, honestly, this is the most fun I've had in fights this year. Though I have liked the fights that released this year as well. I feel like last year, they kind of didn't really do a good job of power with bosses. Because I feel like, is it weird to say it felt overall too easy? Like, the standout fights for me last year are the Goku Frieza fight, the Blue Gogeta fight, Beast Gohan. I would say the Cell Max fight was pretty difficult, but like I felt very confident. Whilst in these fights, I feel like I might not win. I have to really think much more about what's going on in these fights too, right? So that's kind of my thought process on it, and I feel like there's just more relevant fights this year. I mean, we're literally got Fusion's Master here. Like I brought up these two fights, while this year I brought up multiple of these fights, right? Maybe you could be talking about unit power creep, but I assume you mean boss power creep because the damage that these bosses are doing is crazy. I just think it seems large, who said it specifically? Like Rody said, it's a thing of these are they're challenging our units. I think Vector said the same thing too. We'll read a couple more. People are only joining Power Creep because there's no attempt limits. Honestly, that is fair. This fight has no attempt limits. This fight didn't have attempt limits. This fight doesn't. I think it's really nice. We don't have red zones with attempt limits. I think people really don't like attempt limits. Personally, attempt limits are fine overall for me, but I could do without them. Honestly, I think that like now that we're consistently getting more bosses that are on the difficulty without attempt limits, like do we really need attempt limits anymore with how unique they're making these fights? No. I feel like attempt limits should be a thing of the past at this point, but once we get another red zone fight, we will indeed have attempt limits there. We got to keep that in mind. It depends. We'll see how they do it. I mean, red zone Broly is pretty fun for me, and it had attempt limits, so right. Let me some events you don't one try ones even with the best units in the game. You need to think a little bit, but yes, locking is stupid. For GDC was the units doing negative damage. Tao's a turning point in that. I could see the thought process on that because like okay, I mean if we take a look here before like Tao here and Tien started actually doing pretty good damage, but we look prior to that, it's like Blue Calcan was a major flop in damage. Hit is not like a mega damage dealer. Like STR Cell's more of a defensive character, so he's not a damage dealer himself. Kid Goku could build up to do some pretty nice damage. Yeah, I would say Kid Goku could build up to some pretty nice damage, especially because he has the option to guarantee crit. I don't know, I feel like, you know, a lot of the like main releases, like it's been 50-50 for me rather than it's like there's a lot of these characters aren't doing damage, honestly. Yeah. Numbers getting too high too quickly, we need a number crunch. Can't really say you're a fan of any challenge events and festival battles. I will read this one as last one, because we're getting pretty far into it. This year challenging, enjoyable, only GDC, 10th anniversary, Red Zone were very boring. Festival has an insane limited roster, super magnificent battles were alright, haven't done reruns. Let's see if GDC Part 2 has more unique or interesting fights. And yeah, that is a good thing to end it on, because we did vote for fights. We are getting a longer fight during Global Dokkan Celebration. In fact, I'm gonna make another cut real quick here. So we had the votes here, where, for example, which type of event would you prefer? Again, we'll be getting event content in Part 2 around this. Long battles that require building up your strength and strategies for the final showdown. A 4-phase battle where the enemy shows up in each phase. We got number 2 here. So that one was the one that we're getting. Right here, this one has a battle of pure strength where items are not allowed. Items are not allowed. Enemy cannot impose restrictions on their character's actions. Versus utilizing various skills and items. Items are allowed. Enemy can impose restrictions on your character's actions. I feel like people really don't like enemies imposing restrictions on what our characters can do, even with items allowed. So I think a lot of people do prefer the first one, is why the first one did win. Chao does not, Chaotic does not like, I don't know why I messed up your name 3 times. Chaotic does not like the first option. I think the second option I could really see, because I mean, when's the last time we had an event where it's like you have to use items? That would be interesting. But for my YouTube titles, I really like no item runs, so sorry, Chaotic. Let's see here. Which conditions do we add to missions here? Forming a team with all 5 super types, all 5 extreme types, and then forming a team with characters in 1 type. I liked the second one, but the first one did win. Monotype would be really interesting to me. Personally, I think that'd be really fun, but I think people like having like more flexibility in the choices here. So, I mean, I don't know. Really looking back on it, I think I did vote for this long fight. Just because, again, we've been getting... This fight is a short fight. When did this go up, actually? This was on the 5th. I forgot when this fight drops. I don't think this fight was out yet. I don't believe so, because this fight came out with the new characters. But looking back, now that we have this fight, I do like the option of getting a longer fight. Again, that has no dodge disable. That's what I really want. But considering this guy specifically does remove that, we'll probably see dodge disable, unfortunately. But yeah, again, this is what we should be looking out for in terms of what these bosses are doing. So, let me know what you guys are thinking. We'll see some part 2 stuff again. We should see the part 2 like announcement for like the card art reveals, I guess, soon. Like any day, literally any day. I think if they're gonna do another EZA in part 1, we'll see it on the 20th announced, like one of these 2 days, because the units come out on like the 23rd, 24th. So it would have to be a 2 data download week if they drop another EZA. What they could do is they could announce the card arts and then reveal an EZA. Like maybe they do it on the 20th. It's like the card art reveal and the EZA announcement for Vegeta Trunks or something. And then we get a data download for that. And then the 23rd is when we have the actual reveals. 24th, or like the 23rd, yeah, like the actual reveals with the data download. Then the characters come out the 24th/25th, depending on your time zone. But that's my prediction. Maybe that'll be another video. Anyways, I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace out.